Hello YouTube, this is Washable Platypi here for our second episode of our Veritas podcast. This podcast will be featuring Mace, Doobix, and Bender. Kirin was not able to make it, but essentially these are the legend finishers for the Season 3 of RTA. So I'll go ahead, you guys will go in a line, we'll start with Mace, Doobix, and then Bender. You can go ahead and, if you'd like to, just say, like, what rank you finished at, as well as like your win rate if you wanted to, play style, stuff like that. So we'll start with Mace.
Hey everyone, I think I finished around rank 50. I didn't see the very final cutoff, but I was at 50, rank 50 about a minute before it ended, so I assume somewhere around there. My win rate was just below 65%, I think it was 64.5%. Played standard for the most part, usually either protect the Stenny or I would occasionally flex into, like more of an aggressive draft with Basar and G-Perg.
Alright, Doobix?
Yeah, I'm Doobix. I mostly just played Yellow Cleave, and what else did I do? Oh, I ended like top 30, I think. But yeah, I just mostly played Yellow Cleave, and I just like pressed S3, and if I didn't kill him, I just top right. If I killed him, I win, I guess.
Alright, and Bender. We'll finish it off with you.
I'm Benwer, top rank 75. I'm a standard player that really enjoyed abusing ball up to Frenzy 9, so everyone had a really good time.
Fuck you. Alright, so for this podcast, we're pretty much just going to be talking about our overall experience with this season, maybe compared to last season, and then looking forward and into like what we potentially would think like the meta for E7WC with like the unit buffs and stuff. So I guess I'll start off like this season for me seemed a lot more, at least the matches seemed very they teetered almost on like RNG based to me, at least. A lot of like RNG heavy units were very popular in the last day. I'm looking at you, Fire Ravi, but I felt like there's so much that could kind of go wrong with either like a counterattack or dual attack, stuff like that, and that kind of made like Legends super I don't want to say inconsistent, that's not the right word, but like there's just a lot of things that could potentially just push you out of the top 100 for Legend because of how RNG heavy it was. I don't know what you guys think. I know Doobix was pretty safe for the most of the parts, or most of the day, so.
Yeah, I got pretty lucky, I think. So I was just going in with no expectation to actually finish Legend, and I think I got pretty lucky with the beginning of the day. I usually don't play in the beginning of the day, but I ended up matching into a lot of people that just kind of died to me. So because of that, I ended up like 41:20, 41:30, like about 12 p.m. EST, and I was like, oh, I guess I could probably do this. And then I just slowly kept playing a couple more games, and then just like ended up, I think, 41:71 at the very end, or 41:72. So kind of worked out for me.
I think I agree with Platty on the argument that a lot of the units foster a very RNG environment. For example, when you look at like F10A, G-Perg, and all these type of units, like they're very volatile in their draft, right? Like you have a dual imprint, you have F10A that does whatever she does, which basically means if the match is over turn 1, or then you might be able to stabilize and lose, which I think is why the matches were a lot faster, and a lot of people were in and out of Legend more consistently.
And I guess for your guys' draft styles, I know it doesn't really apply to Doobix, right? Because Doobix was just kind of doing whatever he wanted. But I know for like myself, and I know Mace, and I'm not sure. Bender played pretty consistently throughout the day as well. But I felt like sometimes even if you won quote unquote the draft phase, you could still just lose the match to one sort of instance where something goes wrong.
I think that applies to most drafts, I think. Because, again, we have 50% as a constant in the game. Then you have dual attacks, which is another 5%. And then we have units like G-Perg that increases that dual attack chance. And then other units that just have a lot in their kit that can either be you win or lose. Example, a Tywin has an 80% chance to stun your whole team every other turn. So it pretty much like allows for a lot of everything that can go wrong in a match, which is a possibility throughout.
I think the thing for me was similar to that RNG. There were some matches you would play, and it just felt like you ran over people when kind of everything went your way, and you're like, oh, this is so easy. And then RNG wouldn't go your way, and you would just feel like you couldn't win. So I definitely agree. Sometimes it felt a little out of your hands.
Yeah, I think in, for example, the case of Ravi, I actually just went even more reckless because if I tried to go a bit more safe, what would end up happening was I had to pray. I would have to basically pray that the Ravi wouldn't counter me once, and then I just lose. So I just like went in more reckless and just like I started picking CDOM essentially just to be like, all right, I'm just gonna force this, and if they don't ban the CDOM, I have a way to kill, guarantee the kill on Ravi. If they do ban the CDOM, well, hopefully I can set up in a way that Ravi hopefully doesn't one-shot my dumbass. So other than that, yeah, I think what ends up happening a lot of the time is a lot of people use Flurry as a pretty staple counter to like stopping aggression, and when Flurry just misses the strip or misses just one debuff that is pretty important, like the provoke, you end up in a really bad spot.
Mace knows that issue.
Yes, all too well. And the worst part is like you'd see it happen, you know, like the resist, and you're like, okay, now I'm basically playing, you know, to hold on for the next like basically 3 or 4 cycles around, just hoping that I'll have that like 5% chance to win it back and survive. Usually didn't.
Yeah, as someone who used Fire Ravi, I would say quite a bit on the last day. Someone in chat said it pretty well too. Like sometimes you could just fire Ravi when you felt like you were outdrafted, and you would still win the match, right? Or like you would just honestly just RNG your opponent, and I think that's okay to a certain extent, but at the same time, like those units feel really, really bad to lose against. Like it never feels good to lose based purely on that.
Really, I don't actually think that if you pick Ravi in a situation where you're just outdrafted, like I think that the situations you always pick a Ravi in are situations where Ravi is good. And the reason why she can 1v4 you is because they drafted in a way where they are very, very susceptible to just losing to one counterattack. And because you roll the dice on that 20% so many times, the Ravi pick ends up actually being a very good counter pick because of it. Because if they don't have enough damage to just outright burst your Ravi or hold your Ravi down, then they just play the slot machine. That's all they're doing.
We are gacha players after all.
We are gacha players. So, I mean, there's a 1 in 5 chance of you losing, and then if you attempt that 1 in 5 chance 6, 7, 8, 9 times, you're bound to at least eat one of them. Sometimes 3 of them in a row, and then
Now, do you
then
think
it's completely over. But
do you think like a unit like that is healthy or is necessary, I guess, when it comes to RTA?
I think that unit's fine for RTA, if I'm being honest. I think if you get sold by Ravi, sometimes it is unfortunate, but how many times does it actually happen that one Ravi souls your team if you draft correctly? If you let Ravi through when you have, let's say, 3 Earth units or a Basar and a Landy, and then she counters and kills your Basar or counters and has rest 3 ready to kill Landy, And I think it's your fault for not having an anti-Ravi measure in place. Like I don't see Ravi ever soloing a team that she shouldn't win most of the time. Like you see it sometimes happens in a cleave setup, but then it's like it's unfortunate. It happens once in a while because of a 5% chance to dual attack or 20% chance to counter, and then she can S3. But I don't think that usually decides the like you losing the match. It's more like you lost in the draft already, and then you just left yourself open to the Ravi solo.
All right, time to bring Rikazo in here because I saw it happen to him like 3 times. It's actually so unfortunate.
Yeah, I do think that overall Ravi is, I think, fine. It just feels really bad because the meta itself is actually designed right now in a way that Fire Ravi does work quite well. The only thing that really stops her is like a Tywin stun, right? And if you miss the a Tywin stun and she counters, like you can be in a real pickle. But other than that, yeah, I think having a bruiser that can heal quite a bit, it helps at least keep things somewhat diverse. Otherwise, like imagine if you didn't have the ability to pick Ravi, it would be a lot harder to punish people who pick like ML Crow, FCC, G-Perg, and then just like sit there and just continuously, ML Crow S through you over and over again.
Yeah, that's fair. I think she definitely, her being around is kind of like a necessary evil, honestly. Like it does feel bad, but I do think like without a unit like Ravi, like it's really hard to contest like some of these like hyper aggressive night drafts with like ML Crow, ML Tywin, and like Bassar and stuff, because she does counter those drafts pretty well, I would say.
I think the only time I got really frustrated by Ravi wasn't necessarily because of her, it was because of something else. So I got frustrated because I drafted correctly, like I had the blue Crow, so I could horse her, and then the opponent got lucky, and dual attacked into Crow, killing him. So then I didn't have the horse option, so then you're like, okay, well now I guess I get soloed.
Yeah, I think I had an instance where like my SSB got hit like twice and stunned by the Fire Ravi, and that felt bad. But otherwise,
yeah, that's always feels bad.
It felt like I was in an okay spot, but I guess now like moving away from the whole like Fire Ravi RNG stuff, like I guess we probably should have started off with this, but we're kind of just talking. It's no real script, but I kind of wanted to go through and like I guess go into depth more about like how you felt about your climb and like what were the pros, what were the cons, what helped, did you enjoy it, and then would you do it again, I guess. So I guess we'll start with Mace on that one.
So I was like gunning for Legend all the way from the beginning of the season because I tried to get it last season and I just fell short. So I really wanted to make it. So one of the things I did was I swiped my credit card more than I ever have on this game throughout the entire season.
Very nice.
And I summoned so much, it was ridiculous, to get like almost every artifact plus 30 that I had on my team. And my reasoning was like, well, if I'm going to do this, I want to put myself in a position where I have the best possible stats I can, to succeed. So I also farmed a ton. And I think I improved my gear quality pretty dramatically between this season and the previous season. And I think it did help some. And then in terms of the actual climb, I just tried to play as consistently as I could throughout the season, so I was kind of aware of the meta shifts. And I found that was really important because every so often you would run into a player that was not maybe hip to the meta, let's say, and they kind of like drifted backwards, and they were kind of like doing similar strategies to what you saw happening a few weeks ago. So having played then, and figured out what worked against that, I think was very important and helpful. And then on the final day, I think that it was really important having everybody in chat to kind of keep the emotional, like the mental state of it consistent. Because I think earlier in the day, I kind of boomed a bit. I lost a few in a row, and it was pretty hard, to handle that just because you think to yourself, like, I don't have time to make this back up. and everyone was really helpful in kind of calming you down and keeping you focused, and redirected on just playing the best you can and getting there in the end.
Yeah, I think that's probably my favorite part about this whole ordeal is like just being able to like have like the support around you, right? Like I remember like 2 days prior, like I boomed like 200 points, right? And I did not feel good about the climb at all, but like it was really helpful to kind of like have everyone else kind of slap some sense into you, right? Like it's like, you can do this, you've been in Legend all season, right? You have the gear, you know what you're doing, like don't let a string of bad RNG, don't let like a slight misplay affect your entire day. I think that is extremely important to have in order to like maintain your mental to the spot where like I can do this, I'm going to do this, and we're just going to go ahead and climb. And if you don't get it, you don't get it, but at least you tried like your very hardest. So,
and I'll definitely be trying again. I think now my account is set up to a point where I feel like confident I can just keep trying for it, and I don't have to like spend a bunch of money to do that. So I want to take advantage of that, and I think it'll be fun to do it again in seasons to come. I think the pressure will be off because like now I'll have made it once, and that was like the scariest part for me. I think also the the moral support will be fun doing that with everyone again. I think it kind of brings a guild together to have that experience, and that's to me one of the most fun parts of playing the game.
All right, Doobix.
Yeah, for me, I boomed pretty hard over the weekend just before the push. Because everything I was doing wasn't working, and then I tried pivoting into like playing more standard, and that actually like boomed my mental harder than anything else. So I was like, fuck it, I'll just switch back to like playing Gperg, Gperg cleave, and like we'll see if I can get legend with it. So I just took it a lot easier. I just went in with no expectations, recovered my mental, and then I got pretty lucky on the last day. So, uh, yeah, overall, I'd probably do it again. I think in the last day is pretty fun, just because everyone is trying to achieve legend, trying to work together to see if they can do it. And since I did it I finally done it the first time, because season 1 I hated season 1 when I played. I was like, there's nothing fun about this meta for me, because it was pretty tanky. On top of being pretty tanky, like if I ever tried to cleave, and since there was no pre-ban, RB just kept running me over, so I was like, I'm not really having fun. Season 2 I was like super lazy, but season 3, like it's like, yeah, this is pretty fun. So I definitely do it again. And as May said, it does help bring a guild together. I think there isn't enough content in E7, unfortunately, that gets guilds talking. And at least on like the last day of RTA, we kind of had that to do. So
yeah, it kind of reminded me of like old season 2 GVG days where we would all like sit and call.
When it was sweaty as shit. Yeah, I remember that.
But like,
yeah, I mean, it sucked, but also it was kind of fun because I think building that camaraderie like really helps. I guess like keep you interested in the game, because if you play solo, it's quite easy to like kind of just lose interest over time. But if you guys have like a clear goal together and everyone's working towards that goal, even though like it can get kind of sweaty sometimes, overall it's a fun experience.
All right, and then Bender, I know like I don't want to say it's like unknown, right? But like for the most part, right? Like you were in casual guilds season 1 and 2. This is the first season you pushed, right?
Yeah, this is like the first season I pushed, only just because I think it was a lot more interesting than the other seasons. In the other seasons, you basically played 4 nights or a tie win and you just stalled for the season whole. This season, you can either like play more aggressive or even try different comp style, which I thought was a lot more entertaining. But I think everyone overall just enjoyed this season a lot more because you just didn't have to play only lights the whole time. Like there were meta shifts, you could try out different units and actually enjoyed yourself a lot more. And I'm sure like the tourney was also an incentive to everyone near the end. Which thank you for that, Smogly, for the point inflation. But I think like overall, like the guild experience and like the community experience is very fun if like you're playing for like a higher end RTA, just because you can talk to each other while you're playing, or like even like just interchange different ideas that you have, which is a lot better than just, let's say, talking to yourself or even like writing out and trying different stuff out, because like then it's like it's only your own ideas that you have. So I do like enjoy being part of a different guild that actually pushes for RTA if that is like what you're interested at the moment. For me myself, I think I would push RTA again if they introduce different changes, because I'm not sure if this change of like having multiple units having to be built for RTA is the healthiest mindset. Because if you're missing, let's say, an MO5, then you're always going to be at a back foot at whatever meta you're in.
Yeah, I think for myself, I tell myself this. I told myself this after like last season, right? That I'm never gonna push RTA again, right? And then you just start playing RTA because it is for us, right? Like as in-game players, it is like the only thing to do outside of farm, right? So like, I tell myself I'm never putting myself through this again. This is awful. Last day stress, not worth it. I'm just gonna play. And then you just start playing, right? And you're like, well, okay, I'm in Legend, might as well. And it kind of builds on that, and then the last week comes, you're like, okay, I guess I'm pushing again. And it's fun to me. Like, while it's still like sweaty and stressful, like I, as much as I hate to say it, I do kind of miss like those old sweaty GVG days, right? Like I like the camaraderie and like the ability to have like the guild like come together, right? Because, and even post season 3, right, I would say we've seen much more activity within the guild revolving specifically around RTA. A lot of players that weren't necessarily playing the game as much, they were just kind of farming, logging in, doing their dailies. It kind of changed, right? They're like, they saw us push on the last day. They knew it was stressful, right? But like they saw like how we like worked as a group, how we like helped keep each other in check, stuff like that, and it kind of sparked something where they're like, I want to do this now. And I think it really does help with like the guild health too, because I mean earlier on, like Veritas was, I think the lowest we were was probably like what, 22 members, Doobix, like 22
Something
out
like
of 30.
that.
Like
Yeah.
guild was, I don't want to say dead, but like there wasn't enjoyment. There wasn't a spark to, or a reason to like play competitively.
Yeah, a lot of us were just kind of coasting through the game at the moment because we weren't really into RTA. We had a brief spark when Expos came out initially, and then of course it kind of dies over time. But yeah, and then a lot of us were kind of burnt out from GVG since we got pretty unlucky during the season before, and then we decided to try to hit rank 1 in the season after as the redemption run. So a lot of us like ended up either quitting or just playing very casually. So we were like 22, 23 members, something like that. And then from there, yeah, you kind of like slowly recruited a lot more people, and then we're kind of back at full capacity. So
yeah, and I think like it's nice to see like as a guild leader and just like as someone who wants to be around this community, like it's good to see like the activity kind of pick back up, because it does feel bad, right, when you're like, you enjoy this game and you enjoy playing the game with other people, but like when there's not really much to do, it does feel kind of bad. But like to me, it's really nice to see some of these members that have joined now that weren't as active kind of pick up the RTA, right? Like pick up like, oh, this looks fun and I want to do it next season. And I think that's really cool personally.
Yeah, I agree. Like, well, we complain a lot about RTA either being very stressful or being like even a toxic stress on some people sometimes. I think it's a necessity for the game, just because there's only so much you can do in every other aspect in the game. You can fight the same bots 100 times, but you eventually get burned out, regardless if you're aiming for like being a top 1 guild or even aiming for being a top 100 guild. But when you look at RTA, it's like you have that competitive environment between players or even between your guild mates that you want to like strive for a certain amount of guild mates to be legend or even top 16, which I think is a necessity for these types of games. Otherwise, there's no real aim. Because guild, it was interesting for like the first 1 to 2 years, but then everyone eventually just gets burnt out of it, regardless.
Yeah, GVG guild. Woo. Fix GVG, please. But
I think GVG is relatively fine. I just think that there just needs to be more variety in GVG content.
yeah. So now that we're past this season, have you guys seen anything in the preseason so far with like new units and stuff? I know I wanted to talk briefly on units like Carmen and Troublemaker Crozet, because I think both of those units are actually going to be pretty important moving into season 4.
Crozet, that unit actually looks interesting to use. I'm not sure about Carmen, because like Carmen was, you could have always built her like around, let's say, like really fast just to mitigate turn 1. But now that we're in a strip meta, I'm not sure I would actually use it. But Crozet actually looks like a good unit to have as a general, like as a standard player for a knight. I think it's very good for a support unit right now.
I actually think if we're in a strip meta, Carmen's actually better than FCC in that case, because Carmen actually reduces more damage than FCC, because all FCC's damage mitigation is through shield, whereas now Carmen is what, 15% just like straight up damage reduction, which is actually pretty big. On top of that, she now has a 100% provoke chance on the S1, which the only other unit that has that is FCC. And the reason why like FCC is pretty strong is the fact that she can also just lock down one unit over and over and over again. So I think
FCC also brings sustain though.
What do you mean by this? Oh, through the shield, right?
Like the reappearing
Yeah.
shield.
I suppose in that case, yeah. But overall, Carmen does have more damage mitigation, so I think you might be able to. You would have to change your drafts a little bit. I don't like, of course, FCC still does the FCC thing with the shields and with the skill null, but I do think that Carmen has a pretty good place, and I wouldn't sleep on either units for sure.
I think Carmen would be a decent option. The only problem is that a lot of times you're picking FCC first if you're a standard player. If you pick FCC as the first pick, a lot of times Carmen would not necessarily be a first pick contender unit. You might pick her as a third pick or a fourth pick because you're looking for extra mitigation. In that case, you're just overlapping and making Carmen a lot less useful than she would necessarily be. So I think a lot of times people still always take FCC first, and Carmen might just be a very like niche pocket pick for a lot of people, just because that mitigation is only necessary in very specific situations.
I do think she serves as an okay replacement though, if the FCC does get banned out.
As a first pick?
Potentially, yeah. If you're playing,
I wouldn't do it as first pick because I think tea time is still too oppressive. But
that is also true. Tea time very. OP.
I think that as Bendwer said, I think she mostly belongs as like a later pick, like a 3 to 5. Probably like I think 4 is like kind of the perfect number for her. You want to see what they draft, and then you pick her as more of a response rather than the same as FCC, because FCC does deter tea time. She does deter ball to a certain extent, and Carmen can't really do those kinds of things.
Maybe you draft FCC and Carmen with tea time, so you have the double provokes to constantly activate tea time.
Maybe you just take them to Frenzy 9 with Sage Ball.
Now we're talking.
Well, he's your fourth. He's your fourth.
The content we're looking for. Frenzy 9 content.
Yes.
And then Troublemaker Crozet. I know Mace, you've actually been using him, haven't you?
I tried him a little bit. I need to get the CR boost EE, and the game refuses to give it to me, so I'm probably gonna have to wait a week on that. I think he has potential. He's just a little awkward. He almost feels more like a GVG unit to me, because he gives like really strong protection to one unit but not to the rest of the team, so that the fact that he doesn't protect the rest of the team is mitigated with fewer people on your team in GVG. But I think that he seemed to kind of do work in a comp where you have a singular DPS unit that you're trying to protect, like a Landy, for example, and the other units are units that the opponent does not want to hit. So I was drafting him with, let's see, I was doing Amaru also, so that's a unit that you don't want to hit, and you could pick like some other unit with counter or something like that. And it was kind of cute. It seemed okay. I didn't mola him though. I think that if he pops off and stuns people, he can do work for sure though.
I actually think the Temperance artifact is OP on him.
I ran into somebody trying that. I think it was actually the Asia player who has the number 7 at the end, and he was using it with Tempest Surin.
Yeah, no, I lost to that guy actually.
Yeah, it didn't seem like it did anything though.
The Temperance kind of screwed me over with the T-Cern, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I think Troublemaker Crozet does kind of require you to draft in a different way though. In a way that I would never draft, and that's why I'm never gonna build him. But
I think he's a perfect unit for Bender, honestly.
He honestly is.
yeah,
I think if you're like a big standard player, or even you enjoy playing Protect the One, he can be a really good unit to replace one of the 3 standard knights. Just because he's always going to be providing some form of support to the team, either in the stun or the cleanse or any of his buffs that he gives right now.
His cleanse has been really clutch for me.
Yeah, that was my exact thought. I think it's a good knight to have as just an extra pick right now.
The more knights, the better. The more knights, the better. Now, I guess, so moving past this point now, do you think that the meta will shift with these units for E7 WC? Do you think that the buffs are relevant enough to kind of shake up how we used to play? Or is it going to remain relatively the same? Do you think players are going to still play like what they're used to, since there's, one, a lot of money on the line, but 2, it's probably what they're more comfortable with playing?
I think with the current way the meta ended up, I don't think they really change anything. Because I think A Tywin is still gonna just be oppressive. I guess the DJ Basar buffs might help with A Tywin, but I'm not too sure. I haven't really been playing RTA lately. I've mostly been trying to hit bronze instead.
You've been playing too much Eternal Return.
Yeah, I've only been playing Eternal Return. Dude, the game's great. I love that game. I think I have like 95 hours in that game now. Like, it's so bad. I'm actually losing sleep over this game because I keep playing till like 3 a.m. and then I have to wake up at like 8:30, 9. So I usually I go to sleep at like 1. So it's pretty doomed. But regardless, I don't think it really stops like the like. I think the problem is that these 2 units don't really stop what's currently being run, which is a lot of Crow, like Blue Crow, which is a lot of Flurry, which is a lot of A Tywin, stuff like that. A Maru also like fucks all of them with the seal. So I don't really think it shakes up the meta necessarily. But I think it just provides standard players more options in order to not die. Like, I think there's a lot of ways to not die now. And if you die to cleave, it's like kind of your own fault at this point. Like, there's so many things that like you don't need speed on. You just need to like build them tanky, and then you just auto win. Like, you pick Carmen, you pick SSB, you just pick all these units that, like, even if you concede first turn, even if they get the perfect setup, they still lose because they just can't kill you.
That sounds amazing.
Like that's basically what these two units are. They're just ways to just not die.
Carmen SSB DN, back at it again.
Yeah, you could honestly do that. Also, DN's really strong right now, I think.
Yeah.
Even though like Bazaar is still Bazaar, her turn cycling with her buffs are quite nasty.
I tried DJ Bazaar in kind of the Ray slot. Like, I basically gave him Ray's gear. So he was speed tuned, to be like 10 or 15 speed faster than, my DPS, and he had like 250 ER. And I think he had like 14k HP and like 1300 defense or 1400 defense or so. So he wasn't going to get like one shot by something, but he wasn't, super thick. And he just seemed to perform worse than Ray did in that role. The CR push was nice, but not having that extra healing, the burst healing that Ray had, made a big difference. And so it didn't really seem like he fit super well into that slot. I'm kind of wondering if maybe he would be better if you sped him up more and sacrificed ER and maybe just tried to use him against like ML Taiwan or something, to cycle, his immunity and CR push more. Maybe keeping him around like 100 to 150 ER. I don't know. I might try it.
I think that when it comes to DJ Bazaar, you can kind of think of him and approach him as like the G perk to aggressive debuff. So if they pick a bunch of like if they pick like Cerise, Tea Time, and they're just like out to kill you, if you put your DJ Bazaar at like 240 and you ban like the only thing that holds your DJ Bazaar back, so like for example maybe like the Tea Time, if you can't get enough of FRES, you let the Cerise go and then you just like cut in between and just like unload all of your skills into them. Same way you would do with G-Perg into like any AoE cleaver. So granted,
I think running him faster is better.
Yeah, it's like more niche because not many people play aggressive debuff.
Right.
But when you find that spot, like especially if they're picking a much more aggressive like A Taiwan draft. Like if they pick the Cerise, they pick the Tea Time, they pick the A Taiwan, and then they're like really trying to set up that A Taiwan, the A Taiwan engine to go. If you can get the DJ Bazaar in between that, you can just win the game by just pressing S3.
The problem is having 3 sets of 250 ER equipment, speed tuned at 240 for DJB, like 210 for Ray, and like 190 for Destina.
You don't have that?
Because I think that DJB is a very aggressive anti-debuff unit, and if you aren't playing aggressive, then he feels worse than Ray. I can definitely see that. But yeah, I do think that overall I like DJB more than Ray. Granted, I don't have Ray. But I used to play quite a bit of DJB. Like a lot of people would really like to bring Cerise into me, and then I just had the DJB ready, like 270 speed, like 100, like basically on just like complete chump gear, but just like fast, and I just cut and then just go, and then all I needed was that S3 to win.
Do you guys find like the damage mitigation is that much? Like, does that change?
That was
anything?
something that frustrated me as a slower player. Like, I'm more of a turn 2 player. I like them to go and then, then I go. And, it's nice to have. He's not going to get one shot out the gate, and he'll probably get his S3 off now. But it doesn't help you at all after that. And so part of what I look for in a hero is that ability to sustain beyond just when you finally get the turn. It didn't really seem like it would have been too much to ask for him to just have that baked in to his kit. I don't think that would have necessarily made him OP at all, because his skill 1 isn't groundbreakingly impactful or anything like that. So him sticking around doesn't seem overpowered to me.
Yeah,
well, I think DJB's issue is still the same. After turn 1, he is still the exact same unit. He just now heals 200 more HP off S1. So I think overall it just doesn't make a big difference, like his placement. And in overall, like speaking towards all the buffs, I think none of them can force a meta shift. Just for the simple reason that when you look at units that force a meta shift, they tend to be meta units that can force a reaction from your opponent. When you look at a Tywin, when you look at F10 or like RB for the Gab gamers, like you need a reaction or you automatically lose that game. None of these units technically can solo a game or even force a reaction necessarily. They are most like units that either support a certain play style or can just fill niche roles.
I got soloed by a DG Bazaar.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I do think that actually for the way I play, the damage mitigation is actually pretty big because I used to run Proof of Valor in order to not get immediately sniped. But now with the 30% crit damage reduction baked in, I can actually switch to Vile and I can use him as a flurry counter, an ML Rin counter. Anyone who tries to like, hold down with like with a single target skill, I essentially can use it for that now.
Yeah, I don't know. There's been 2 DG Bazaars that I fought on ladder. One of them soloed me, and that was in the Jagan tournament. The other one just died to my Rylet skill 3 with his skill 3 up. So I don't know, like.
Yeah, I don't think the 30% damage mitigation actually saves him from Rylet. I'm pretty sure
I think Rylet just still kills.
Rylet is like actually pretty fucked up. So it's kind of hard for DJB to live regardless. That is something that I do kind of wish, yeah, they just had the 30% permanently on him. But I do think at the same time I think it's very dangerous to make a very strong anti-debuff hero, because if you could pick DJ Bazaar like 1-2, that's a serious problem, because he is so strong into debuffs. Yeah, I mean the 30% is pretty big, but I also have done it on LQC, right? And LQC has the same 30% damage mitigation, and she just like, depending on how tanky yours is, she can just sometimes almost just straight up die to a Rylet. Depending on the kind of Rylet, of course, but the 30% is a lot, but also at the same time, because it's also crit damage mitigation, it's not the best.
I think 30% is a lot when you are planning to use it not for necessarily a turn 1 S3, or even like you just want to stall with him for like either turn 2 or turn 3 and then use that to stabilize. But I think overall his kit still just, it doesn't do enough in my own opinion. Like the 30% is nice for damage reduction, but then the healing is mediocre, and then he still doesn't provide anything for his team after he has 3s. Because that healing, in my opinion, just does not justify having him in any of the slots that he might be able to fill in.
Yeah. Either way, I do think that the 30%, regardless, the 30% is really strong. It's just, unfortunately, he loses it after using his S3. So you get to hold the S3. Actually, I do think though that he is really strong with he is stronger with tank players, because the buffs that they did to him are on the percent HP, and it and because of that, like for example, if you run with like 20k tanks, he's healing for 3k as opposed to 2k, which over time, especially if like you're playing maybe like a Kotick style draft, with like DN, FCC, like tea time, the heals start racking up. And I think that the heals are actually like, they don't look like a lot, but 3k every turn can start, and it's 3k to all allies. So that's of like, yeah, 4 allies, right? Like it's pretty significant each turn. Like that's a
I
lot
think
of
the heal's
effective HP.
only on soul burn. Like
No,
the
the
AoE heal.
no the heal is to everyone.
Yeah, if you soul burn, it's like 6k
Oh.
probably.
Yeah, the heal is just increased when you soul burn. So I do think that the sustained healing is actually quite nice on him. It's just I think a lot of people aren't used to picking him as well, and I think that depending on how you play, you either are a S3 only player, or you are a spam S1 hold S3 for the rest of your life kind of player. Which I don't know. I do think that the S1 is actually the healing actually is pretty good, but I think you have to like get that you have to get the tuning right on it. So I'm not too sure. Maybe you could try like some weird ass like counter DJB or something.
Do you think
But-
he would be OP if they just made his 30% crit resistance baseline?
I mean, I think he just kind of whatchamacallit. He depending on the way you play, you can essentially hold it till the end of time. Because you just hold it until they use the skill.
Right.
And then once they use an important cooldown, you can then use your S3. Because I think if you're playing like a much more defensive style, you don't need to immediately spend the S3. You can just hold it until they've over committed on trying to debuff you, and then you press 1 S3 and you completely wipe out what they were trying to do. So I don't know. I think that I do think that DJB is actually, even though he's not oppressively strong, I think he's still very good in his niche, which for a debuffer or anti-debuff, I think that's incredibly important, because if he, as I said earlier, if he could be picked 1 or 2, like right off the bat, that means that you can never pick a debuff past that, because then they can just +1 it, and then your debuffs are just, it's over, right? So I think he needs to stay not like ML Crow levels of strong, or like a Tywin levels of strong. But I think
Taiwan's perfectly balanced. I don't know what you're talking about.
true.
Oh, that body.
So I think right now where he is actually in a pretty good spot. I think everyone likes to meme on the healing, but I think give him some time, let people figure it out, and I do think that he will come and just like make it really annoying to kill people.
Yeah, I do like him with like a bulkier draft. I think for a lot of the healing tests, I didn't actually watch any of them, but I don't know if it was like on a DPS unit or what the team was where they were comparing like healing, but since it is based off of like your unit's max HP and not his, it does play a pretty big factor if you want to kind of just like slowly heal over time, right? Like sometimes like that extra like 1,000 points of like healing plays a huge factor. Like there's so many times where like you'll leave a unit with like 100 200 HP, and now like if they don't die from that initial like burst and you can heal them another 3k just by scaling like skill 1, that's pretty big.
In terms of his attack scaling with it, do you think he needs to be built with attack to take advantage of it, or no?
I don't necessarily think so, but I do think like if you draft him with like something like a General Purgus, right, that does give attack buff, it only benefits him more. And like General Purgus being naturally like bulky, like the healing benefits GP there as well. So I would like to see him versus like the LR Crow and the ML Tywin personally. Not necessarily it doesn't have to be heavy debuff. Probably still really good in a heavy debuff, but like as a way to like sustain up through like that initial burst, right? And then at that point you could potentially still have the AoE immunity versus ML Tywin. Like 3-turn immunity is pretty big. There are not many units give 3-turn immunity. I think it's him and Vivian. Is there anyone else?
For AoE immunity?
Carmen?
No.
How much?
No,
is
Carmen
2.
got.
She too?
Yeah, I think she got reduced from 3.
Also, yeah, the stuns are more relevant than I think people give credit for.
Yeah, I mean it's what, a 30% at max, or like
I think it's more than that.
oh, it's 25 to 35, which is pretty good. That's like, I think
What's
if you
made
max
Chloe?
Mola it, I think if you max Mola it, that's the same as Ravi. So think of every time Ravi stuns you, that could be DJB.
Can you also apply the stun if you soul burn an AoE?
Yes.
Yes.
So you could potentially just AoE stun someone out with a
Yeah,
soul burn
yeah.
skill 1.
Yeah, if you get lucky, but
Yeah.
it's kind of expensive on the soul side, so
Yeah.
I don't usually do it, because yeah, 20 souls is a lot of souls. If it were 10 souls it'd be one thing, but 20 is a lot.
I think 10 souls would be a little too strong.
Oh no,
Yeah.
if it were 10
cost
souls,
soul burns. No bueno.
yeah, I think, yeah, as like Kenny was saying and Tenbird were saying, like the late pick DJB can actually like fuck you up if you're not careful. And I think at the moment the DJB has like a pretty good element of surprise, and I think you just have to kind of figure out how he fits in your draft. I think that's the biggest thing, because I don't think he fits in everyone's draft the same way. Like you can fit, like the same way you can fit like ML Crown to your draft, where you just pick ML Crown and then see where it takes you. But when you find like where he fits, he functions very well.
Are we going to talk about Dilbert, or I don't want to go out of order?
Oh, we can. Like, there's no real like rhyme or reason to this podcast. There never really is. It's just us talking.
Just because she was kind of a newer unit right at the end of the season.
Yeah, we can talk
Oh,
about
Dilbert.
Dilbert. I think
I love Dilibet.
Dilibet is okay.
I think she's complete trash.
I think she is good in very, 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 very specific situations.
I think she's mediocre at best. I think the fact that you can manipulate when she gets her cleanse, the fact that she only has it once every 4 turns right now, it's just not consistent enough to be any good right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I plus 15 mine. Yeah, I don't know.
I think
she's
she
okay.
requires such a slow playstyle that I will never pick her. Because the problem is that if your team just ends up naturally going faster than the enemy team, you've wasted your entire you basically wasted an entire rotation. So like if you pick it into tea time, the tea time has already done her job basically, because she's held your entire team down for an entire turn or an entire rotation, and then if and then the rest of the tea times team goes, and then even if your Dilibet gets that 40%, what is she gonna do? Like she's so far behind, and like the rest of her team is so far behind that you just die to the other 3 units.
I picked her like 3 or 4 times, I think, on the last day, and I'm pretty sure I lost every single time I took her.
It's like me and Champion Zerato.
It was just, she feels incredibly inconsistent. Like Bendwer said about how you're basically giving the enemy the ability to decide when she activates. And what happened for me every single time I took her was the enemy tea time would go and would land some number of debuffs that wasn't enough to activate her, even with a second person on the enemy team going.
Mm-hmm.
And so then they would basically take their turns, and then my team would go, still be fully debuffed, and I would lose 1 or 2 of my turns, and then Dilibet would push up.
Yeah, I think,
and it was pointless.
On that as well, I know for last day I was abusing the shit out of anyone who picked Dilibet, because what I would do is I would pick Tea Time, I'd pick G-Perg, and I'd pick LQC. And anytime they picked Dilibet, I would leave the Dilibet up, because all I did was press Tea Time S3, and then my G-Perg would go, it would push up the Dilibet, and then the Dilibet has to press S3. And it just brings my LQC up, and my LQC just nukes the shit out of their entire team. So like, what did she accomplish? She actually just got her. She actually griefed her entire team.
I also feel like, for Dilibet specifically, but like, if you almost have to let through every debuff, right? Like, if you ban out any debuffs, you're kind of griefing. So if they have like the Cerise Simultaiwan F10 versus your Dilibet, right? You're banking on the fact that Dilibet is able to, one, cut, and then two, like you're able to get a meaningful cleanse off. But if you're not able to do that, or if they like just for instance, if Dilibet's your only cleanser, right? Which I don't think Dilibet should ever be your only cleanser in those kinds of situations, but if they just ban out the Dilibet, then you've already conceded the first turn, right? Like, and I personally, like, I hate conceding first turn when it comes to that, unless like I'm playing like the G-Perg, right? Where I can kind of cheese into the second turn. But if you're not and you're conceding that first turn and like your Dilibet doesn't cleanse right, or if they do miss some of the debuffs that might matter, like you're just in a really, really bad spot.
I think I lost to a Dilibet once, also on the last day, and it felt like the only reason I lost was it was a perfect like series of events for the opponent, where they picked her with Alencia, and the speed tuning worked out perfectly, so that Alencia was able to dispel immunity off my team. So then Dilibet was able to actually get the cooldown reset, which pushed everything back a turn, and then allowed the enemy to chain, provoke, or silence my Taiwan, because he was constantly on cooldown. And it was just like, if one of those things didn't work out perfectly for them, like if one provoke was resisted, or if anything happened, then Taiwan would have started his cycle and they would have just lost. So Dilbert, whatever you want to call her, basically bought them one single turn, and then they relied on chain provoking a Taiwan for the rest of the game and being able to put enough debuffs on him to basically provoke him twice for every turn he got.
I hear Alencia. Alencia's very OP, I hear. Hey, Church of Shuffles. Church of Shuffles.
I actually think Alencia is quite good.
She's good.
Yeah, I think that the fact that she's another stripper, and I think stripping is very strong.
Stripping.
From a lollibaba, huh? And on top of the defense buff, it really sets you up in a really advantageous position. So I am a big fan of her. Yes, the strip game.
All right. With that being said, is there any other topics you guys want to talk about? I guess we can kind of open it up to any chat questions. Kind of
RTA changes.
Oh, the RTA changes. Wait, were there RTA changes?
No, like what should happen for RTA changes? Just
yeah,
like last season we got the frenzy changes, and then a lot of people just did not like them overall.
I know that they're aren't they changing like the way the pre-bans are positioned so they can add more?
They've made it so that that's for like rooms, for mock rooms.
Yeah.
You can create mock rooms that allow you to pre-ban more than one unit.
Mm-hmm. On battle styles?
What
do you mean, like
the Pokemon set? I think it's pretty okay right now, but it remains to be seen. The Tyranitar, the biggest chase card, has a 1 in 803 pack pull rate, so it's kind of hard. But if you do get the sleeping Tyranitar, you've made your money back on the box. There's also a lot of like competitive like TCG cards within like the set, so like right now at least you can sell a lot of like the competitive cards as well that are worth a decent amount of money. But
when are you Kenny, when are you starting your stream or your pack opening stream?
Yeah, what the heck? I don't think we should have three pre-bans. I think that is too many. Six pre-bans for the entirety of like just imagine it, right? There's already people that are extremely pinched when it comes to their unit pool. And unit pool, I think, was kind of an issue for some players last season. So, like, imagine a world where, like, their pool gets pinched by another 3. Like, that's pretty crazy. Like, it becomes really hard for players at that point, I think.
I think that we need to have balance changes then. Just because I think certain units are just too oppressive right now that you need to draft either 2 counters to them or pre-ban them, that you have to either like small guy has to have like some form of balance changes, or also like changing some of the RTA changes that they implemented, basically like now res is useless. You can't heal later in the frenzy matches, and then the moment you get to frenzy 9, you get one shot by anything. Especially if you run like a Sage Ball Frenzy stall comp, then you pretty much lose the moment you reach frenzy 6.
I mean, so even like 3 in Legend though, right? Like I'm looking at players like I'm just gonna throw some names up, but like if you look at someone like Lunal, right, who or like even Light, for example, like the cleave heavy like RTA players, like banning 3 cleave units versus a cleaver is pretty rough. Like cleave is already really hard to pull off, and if you start like giving people the ability to just straight up ban 3 of their cleave units, it's pretty doomed, right? And I don't think that's necessarily like, while that seems really cool, right? Like it 6 ban save control, I guess. but like,
does anybody want that?
For
no, please no. We had F10. We experienced F10.
Control meta, huh?
For like the argument of like changing the amount of pre-bans based on tier, like if you're doing that, right? Like the people who want to climb to legend, like if you're trying to make it so it's easier for people to hit legend, it doesn't matter, right? Like the champion players trying to push that only have to deal with the 2 will eventually have to deal with the 3, right? Like the people who are trying to push into higher that can only really deal with 1 will eventually have to deal with 2, right?
Yeah, I don't really think we need to increase the number of pre-bans.
I just don't think that there's enough units in the game for us to increase the amount of pre-bans right now.
Yeah.
I think it's a combination of not enough units, plus I think it's just more so I'm of the opinion that Super Creative should actually go and look at buffing more of the 4 stars to be budget 5 stars. Because I think there are a lot of things that like there's like ML 5 stars that you just can't replace. So I would, or like even just limited, like for example Cerise, right? Like the only other restriction unit we have is Lucy and Ricarus specialty change, but they both don't nearly do the same amount as what Cerise does. So we could, for example, look at those. We could look at like maybe buffing 4 stars to, you know, add AoE restrict. We can look at stronger like 4-star strippers that could potentially look to not necessarily replace Bazaar, but have like maybe the pushback, like a strip pushback without the unbuffable, stuff like that. Like I think they can look at buffing some of the easier to obtain units to fill those niche playstyles and like help expand the options that you have.
I don't think that'll really impact legend players though, right?
No,
not necessarily, but the thing is that if you're missing that character, you aren't as gimped. You aren't gimped as hard as you were before they like buffed that unit, for example.
But I don't think SG will ever buff a unit to mimic like their ML5 counterpart, in the sense of like you can try and find a replacement for a Tywin, in the sense of like you can go G perk for stuns every other like 2 turns if you sober.
But then it's like
Harada, the true god of E7.
Honestly, Harada's just one specialty change away from being one of the best characters in E7. So there's that.
I do think. Oh, sorry.
He's basically just like a better version of Ball. Not really, because Ball's actually fucked up. You can't really beat the fact that Ball has, you know, Crow Horse, but
yeah,
a better Crow Horse.
I think
you can do it every other turn.
I think one of the issues, right, with kind of E7 too, is the fact that we just have so many more 5-star units than we do 4-star units, right?
Oh, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because of how easy it is to, compared to other games, how easy it is to get those 5-star units. But yeah, I think it's more so I don't know. I'm just of the opinion that their balance changes are kind of weak, and I would like to see more balance. more, yeah, like more balance changes essentially.
I think it's really hard for 4-stars to be impactful, just given their like inferior stat lines.
That's
Like, you're
another
fighting
thing,
an
right?
uphill battle there.
Like, a lot of
Yeah,
the
and
4-stars may seem okay, but they just have 4-star stats, right? Like,
Yeah.
But then
mixing stats is kind of hard.
you think
that
about
really
it,
the
right?
issue?
And then like one of the most core cleave units is an ML 4-star.
The MLs are different though.
Wait, which ML 4-star?
They have
T-star?
more relevant
CDOM,
abilities.
Oh,
CDOM.
CDOM.
CDOM is like so core to cleave. It's
But
kind
she
of,
gets to cheat and not build 50% crit.
that is true.
She
So
also,
that kinda
so I think
makes up for her 4-star.
CDOM is the thing with CDOM, right? Is like she gains just so many free stats with her own passive.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas like a
regardless,
lot of the other 4-stars do not gain those stats, and she also has like an insane Soulburn skill 1 modifier.
yeah, it's super good. But like, I do think that even if they're lacking in stats, you can definitely buff them in a way that they can still be usable. Like you'll eventually have the 5-star that can outclass them. But before then, at least having, it's like using the lesser gems, the lesser stat change gems, right? You use it because otherwise the stat is the conversion that you were originally that was originally on the gear is kind of useless. So
I think that would increase diversity of drafts like at the lower ranks, but those are already pretty diverse. Like people use everything.
yeah, I also think lowering the requirements for molas in 4-stars would also help because
Yeah.
it's currently I think it's fine to have 5-stars be a little expensive. But like the fact that 4-stars are just slightly less expensive feels really bad to build for sure.
I kind of agree, and I also disagree with the saying of gear is more important than units. Based purely on this last season, I think having a more diverse unit pool was much more valuable.
I think up until once you get to upper champ, gear's kind of plateaued. And then it's very dependent on your unit pool, because I think there is still a minimum gear requirement in order to get in. But with all the changes that they've done with substats, with conversions, it's relatively quick to kind of catch up.
Yeah, I was gonna say no one really like in a good majority of the cases. I never felt like I'm truly just straight up outgeared, but I do feel like that pressure when like I feel like I don't have the draft answers to deal with their draft, right?
Yeah, you're missing chunks of gear where like you just don't have enough. Like, for example, if I want to play like Desu, I need to speed up all my units by like 20 speed while trying to maintain the same amount of damage I have at the moment. That's actually just impossible because the amount of pieces that would need 20 extra speed is just I physically cannot do it. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think a lot of the high level players, what ends up happening is, yeah, you consolidate your gear, you figure out what your gear does best, and then you try to draft in that to really use that gear. But if you like, for example, have like God gear, like God DPS gear with like the slowest setup possible, then you're in a pretty tragic spot.
I will say, like, I don't think you need to be that fast. I see someone saying like you can't catch up to 300 plus speed units. You don't like you can't always catch up like the speed difference.
Yeah,
but, like I don't think speed really played that big of a part in a good majority of the matches because you can make up speed with other stats. Like you can
people
kind of
focus on speed too much. You need more than just speed.
Right?
You need
like,
speed and DPS.
I think G-Purgus is a really good example of like how you can cheat speed, right?
Well, G-Perk is a cheater unit, so like
Also
can't really
true.
do much about that. Yeah, I think it's actually kind of important I do think that getting first turn is still pretty important in this meta. But it's not the end of the world if you get outspent, for sure. I think there are they've added a lot of answers into the game where if you do get outspent, there are ways to recover.
Not necessarily, right? A 220 G-Perg isn't always better than a 200 speed G-Perg. It really depends on the rest of your units tuning around that G-Perg, right? Like, you could have, like, a 280 speed G-Perg, right? But it doesn't mean anything if the rest of your units do not follow up that G-Perg, right? Or do not follow up the rest of your draft. Like, you could have, like, the sickest, fastest Cerise, and then, like, it doesn't matter if you can't follow that up with anything else, right?
Yeah.
Like, you could have, like, a 350 speed Cerise, right? And if you can't follow it up with a consistent draft after that, it doesn't matter.
I do think, like, right now, a very large reason as to why cleave is so hard to pull off, or like at least traditional cleave is so hard to pull off, is because there's a lot of people who are really tanky, and there aren't that many units that can deal with super tanky people. The ones that come, like, I can list off the top of my head are what, like Ops, CDOM, and
Shuri.
Yeah, watch a Shuri, and like I guess double Gab RB. Double Gab RB is pretty fucked up. Other than that, it's like pretty hard to like just raw dog damage people down. And then if they can contest speed with you, you typically have to pick 2 speed contests, which then really limit like what units you can bring. And yeah, overall, I think that it's pretty tough to cleave, and like having the speed doesn't really necessarily guarantee you the win, especially if they have the counters ready.
I think what you said about looking at your gear and figuring out what it does best is really good advice. I think a lot of people focus on like, I want to play these units, and then they get upset when they can't succeed with them. But I mean, you obviously need to have the units, but you have to have gear to make a cohesive team work too. Like, I don't have cleave gear. I've tried to do it. I don't have the DPS gear, so I play standard.
Yeah, I think it's the most important thing is because everyone has different accounts. No one has the same, like, I guess you could technically have like similar accounts, where you have very similar pieces of gear, but overall, each account is typically very unique, and like you can watch someone like, I guess the only outlier is really just a Tywin. Anyone who gets a Tywin and you learn how to use a Tywin and draft around a Tywin, you just kind of win. You're always guaranteed like at least high champ, if not legend. But other than that, yeah, like it is really important to figure out like where you excel and where you don't excel, and it's also kind of hard to teach people RTA, especially sometimes, because you might find success with one strategy, but because of how their account is set up, they might not find the same success.
I'm gonna say, like, one of the issues, like, and I'm just gonna throw some names out there, but like when watching certain people play, right, like I found it really hard to like kind of give guidance to when, like, let's say Stanley was playing, right? Because his play style is nothing like I play. I don't play his like really hyper aggressive draft, so it was really hard, right? Because I don't play that way. Whereas,
Yeah.
like, and I can't play like Doobix, right? Like, I don't have that gear set up to play like Doobix. But I do think I can play like my own pretty like aggressive knight style. If I want to, I can draft knights and hate myself. But like, I think it really comes down to making sure your units are tuned to the best of their ability for whatever your account limits you to. Not trying to force different builds and like different units because they are what is quote unquote good.
Hmm. I think when it comes to good in Epic 7, it's it's kind of like what people find the most amount of people find success with. So sometimes you might be an outlier and you might just be unlucky and it just doesn't work. Like if you can't build, like a nice A Tywin that does a bunch of damage, has good speed, decent tankiness, like it's not the end of the world. You can just play G-Perg.
Mm-hmm.
G-Perg is just as good. Maybe a little worse because A Tywin's super fucked up, but
I do want to address something quickly in chat too, like talking about like the AoE defense break, right? Like with cleaving and stuff, like how you're going to use that as an example as to why Adamant Aureus isn't good, and then come out with the statement of most cleavers don't draft AoE defense break just proves the point as to why like it's pretty hard to
well,
deal with that. Like for cleavers, right? Like I don't think like you can use AoE defense break as an example for why like Adamant Aureus isn't relevant, and then also come out with a statement of most cleavers don't draft AoE defense break, which is very true because there's just not enough draft slots to fit that in. So I think
what do you mean? There is defense break. We have we have LR Crow, true damage, better than all defense break, easy.
Yeah, that's why Kat says that ML Crow is like one of the best cleavers because he ignores defense. It's a very true statement for a reason. Like you just stack a bunch of HP on him, yeah, you get as much attack as you can, and then you put portrait and you just rip the S3. Like that's all you can do.
Symbol of Unity gamers, rise.
But yeah, or Symbol of Unity. But I think it's more so the biggest issue with AoE defense break right now is that there aren't any good units that can do it without getting, because you get hard limited in draft when it comes to AoE defense breaks, because there are no AoE defense breakers who strip first, so you always have to bring a stripper. Yeah, as someone says, right? Like that's why Tea Time is so good, because Tea Time presses S3, strips you, and then potentially can put defense break on. Yeah, it's like the inherent issue with AoE defense breakers are that you can't use them. You can't use them to strip, so you have to allot slots to stripping. But then not many of them do enough damage with S3, even if there's like they're really just designed to put an AoE defense break on you. You could argue maybe like ML Ken could be like a you could run him as like a pseudo DPS and like not have to necessarily rely on the defense break, but overall there aren't many characters who can apply AoE defense break that are flexible. But it's a very very rigid playstyle if you try to put AoE defense break.
And then also just replying to like Puck, right? Like a reliable defense break like Flurry is not a cleave unit, right? Like so in the discussion when we're talking purely about cleave, you cannot really slot Falcon or Flurry into cleave ever, right? Like sure,
yeah, you use her as like I typically use her as more of a response rather than as a cleave unit.
And it's not, I wouldn't really even say it's reliable, right? Because there's so many times where Flurry just gets 15%ed. And you don't really want to be wasting your souls on a Flurry skill 3, right? Like,
well, sometimes you just want the game off of it, but yeah.
But like
overall.
for cleave, right? Like you'd much rather use those souls for like, let's say like an RB skill 3 or a CDOM push or like Bizarre guaranteed pushback, stuff like that. As opposed to just using it for like a guaranteed defense break. I mean, but like how many times do you see cleavers draft Flurry Green Vildred? In a case where someone is allowing you to do these things, where you're facing AI, sure. But like in RTA, it's so much different because you're playing against someone that has a brain, and that won't give you these options.
Yeah, I'm. Yeah, unfortunately, with the current state of how this game functions, there you just have to spend way too much draft capital in order to get that AoE defense break. That if you end up getting it, you're gonna typically lack damage. So I just don't really bother with it anymore. I just use, because there's a bunch of characters that ignore defense now, right? They're or not necessarily ignore defense in like 100%, but like Landy, for example. Landy is like actually such a good cleave unit right now because you press S3, and if they have too many buffs, they end up eating the big S3. And then usually with Landy, you can end the game by the second S3. And if you don't end the game by the second S3, you typically are probably in a pickle. And if you get grief by guiding light, you can't really do much about it. But I think right now, as of like the current state of things, you just have to, especially when it comes to cleave, you basically have to just draft a bunch of characters that don't open you up to typical cleave counters, on top of having the ability to either ignore defense or to set up an attack up on your team. And unfortunately, besides tea time, there's no way to strip defense break. If there was another character that could strip defense break, or at least AoE defense break, then we would definitely see that character be super meta and cleave. Probably in any like night comp as well. Because imagine if you could strip defense break into a Tywin S3. You would probably just kill everyone right off the bat. It'd be really funny, but like also kind of fucked up. Because defense break is like super OP.
If we think about it, looking forward to the Elfelt buffs, there's some potential.
I think there is potential with Elfelt. I just think that she still suffers from the same problem, which is you need to get a stripper through. But the fact that she provides an AoE attack up is actually huge, because without an AoE attack up, it feels really freaking bad.
Yeah,
So,
she only strips off one person, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
Buffs
she only
off.
strips 2 buffs, I believe, or 3 buffs. I don't even remember
think 2.
anymore.
It's 2 buffs.
2.
With oh, okay, so 2 buffs, and then yeah, it's strip. Does she still have the defense break on the S3 or no?
Yeah, so she defense breaks.
Does she defense break sleep? Like what?
Yeah,
she
she
used
still
to do?
defense break sleeps.
Okay, so that's pretty good. It's just the problem is that the S2, if you want the AoE defense break, you still need a strip.
Yeah.
But you can probably nuke one character pretty hard now. Especially if you can get her with like with some damage, and like about maybe like 240, 250 speed. She can just like she can go before the rest of the team, but like just after your stripper, and that could definitely do a lot of damage. I think if you land that, if you can get that combo off, if you can get the strip into S3, S2, you can just win the game right off the bat. Like,
Yeah.
there's not much you can do against an AoE defense break with attack up on the enemy team.
It's just Galleon.
Yep. It basically is just it's basically, who you call it? It's Blue Tywin without needing to hit 4 units, and 2 without needing 20 souls, which is pretty big.
Yeah,
I think the
she
fact that you don't
benefits
need the 20 souls.
arena cleave, like, I think you'll see, like, I don't know how many people here played Summoner's War, but if you draft like Basar, Elfelt, Arby, and then like another like AoE damage dealer, like let's say Eller Crow or ML Tywin, you are essentially just drafting like Tiana Galleon with like Lucian. It's essentially you're like Tiana Galleon and what's his name? The guy who comes back to life, Samath. Like it's essentially that kind of arena cleave. So I think Alpha, I see a lot of potential in like cleaving in arena, and I don't know how consistent it'll be in RTA. But if you do get it through, I think you're pretty much guaranteed just to kill everyone. Is that a Warbolt? Monk ass.
It's a live Warbolt sighting.
Damn, that's crazy.
All right, let's open up like the last little bit for like just any chat questions if they had for us, and then we'll kind of just wrap it up. Yeah, I don't know if anybody in chat had questions for us. What does it feel like being a Legend RTA player? Feels like
I'm top 100, baby.
Top 100, Pog you.
Feels pretty good. I like it.
That's nice to just say. Like it, not many people can say that they finished like top 100 within like all servers. A little. Wait.
How many women did you get to touch you after you showed them Legend RTA frame?
Yeah, you tell
0,
us.
because you should be social distancing.
Yeah. Oh, I guess I should probably explain Doobix's picture too.
Oh, well.
Because Mr. Doobix here had a tendency to snipe guildmates and
Look, I've only done it twice. And I stopped queuing after that.
Like everyone
Because-
thinks you join Veritas so you don't snipe each other during RTA. The truth is, you go on call for the last day and tell each other when you are going to queue, just so Doobix can snipe you back to back. It was an amazing experience in Veritas. Only this skill.
Yes. Look, I'm just here to collect the points I need to hit Legend. Nothing else.
It was so funny. It was
Actual scam.
All right. Okay. Okay.
wasn't
The
as
first.
painful
The
as
first.
the
Okay.
Kirin.
Okay. The one with Bend. I honest to God did not hear him say he was going into queue. The second one with Mace, I was in queue for like 25 seconds already. He's like, "Is anyone in queue?" I pinged the role. Turns out he didn't have the role. So then I pinged him directly. He still didn't look, and then I queued into him.
I see.
Not my fault on the second one.
I think my favorite was when Rikazo was in called deafened muted, and I queued into him.
I like the part where Rikazo queued into both you and Kirin back to back.
No, I queued into Kirin, and then I queued into Rikazo immediately after.
Oh.
Like back to back in the last hour.
It
yes.
sucked.
You could hear the emotional turmoil in Pletty's voice.
I
When
was
it
like,
happened.
oh my fucking god, there's no way.
Yeah,
I was like, get me out.
that was pretty funny. But yeah, I don't know. I think that I would definitely do it again. I would definitely snipe all of you again. I would steal all your points, and then I'll give it to a random dude because I'll just lose to a random champ player.
Yeah.
See, this is why I'm gonna rope Doobix next time I see him. Just straight frenzy 9 him now.
That that was also really funny. Remember that one time where the dude just took my entire draft?
Oh yeah.
And
No,
I was like,
like,
wait.
Doobix was like so excited. He's like, I'm gonna do G-Perg, I'm gonna draft C-Dom, I'm gonna draft Landy, and then this random champion player, like, just first pick G-Perg, Landy, and then didn't he draft C-Dom too?
Yeah, he drafted C-Dom at the end.
And we're like, wow, he actually
he
stole
literally
his
took
entire draft.
he took Ops, he took I think he took Arby as well. He actually took everything that I was playing at the time and then just used it against me, and I was like, what the fuck?
Did you win?
Funny.
Yeah, I won. You think I'd lose to my own draft? You're crazy.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, probably.
I don't know. I thought that was super funny though. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the podcast though. If there's no other questions or like legitimate questions, But yeah, thank you, Mace, Doobix, and Bender for hopping on. I know I got a question on Discord about like potentially doing more of these, so if any of you guys are interested for hopping onto more podcasts, just I'll ask around. But it was good having you guys on. If you guys wanted to say like a little bit about yourself at the end, we'll start with Mace and go to Doobix and Bender. But yeah, I know Mace streams and has YouTube content as well, so we'll go ahead and start with Mace.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me. I had a good time. I am going to be streaming occasionally, more frequently in the future. And I do have a YouTube channel, so please go check that out. You can just search Mace1370 Gaming on YouTube.
And I'll go ahead and put your links and stuff in the description again.
Yeah. I said I was going to start streaming. That was like 3 months ago. I don't think I'm ever actually going to start streaming.
Go follow Smalls Loot 22.
But no, don't do that. I want to stay hidden. I like being hidden. But
your identity has already been exposed. It's too late.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I'll probably stream once next year.
Nice.
And then Bender.
Smilegate, give me a Tywin, please, and please report Doobix.
Yeah, mass report Doobix. Easy clap. But yeah, that's it for the podcast, guys. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, if you enjoy these, if you had anything you wanted to add, feel free to comment, like the video, subscribe. Follow me here on twitch.tv/washballplatypi. We'll be trying to do more of these in the future. But thank you guys for coming out, and catch you guys on the next video.